All right, let's get going here. This is section 7.5, or sorry, 7.4 in the textbook. All right. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at factored quadratics. Or factoring quadratics, okay? Now, you guys actually did this back in grade 10, okay? For example, maybe you guys remember doing something like this. It's like reverse FOIL. So maybe you have like x squared plus 5x plus 6. So remember, you'd break up into two brackets, something like that. And you would do reverse FOIL. Remember, x squared is x times x, right? Ooh, that's a little messy. X times x. So now, that didn't help either. One more time. So now, to find the middle terms here that go here, you have to look at factors of 6 that add up to 5. So there's 2 times 3, 6 times 1. I'm going to go with 2 times 3. Like so. Now what you've actually done is you've factored this quadratic. And what a factored quadratic will do is they will actually show you the x-intercepts of the graph, of the parabola. Okay, so once you've factored it, you need to split each bracket. And make it equal to 0. Then solve for x. Okay, so if we go back to this example here that I had at x squared plus 5x plus 6, so I made both my brackets like this. Now remember, when you're factoring, it doesn't matter if you write it this way or this way. They're the exact same, okay? So it doesn't matter if you write them the opposite direction, or the opposite order, sorry. They're both the same. Okay, so nothing's changed from Math 10 so far. Cool. Now that this is done, though, this is where I take each one now and I split them. So I go x plus 3 and I make it equal to 0. And I take the other one, x plus 2, make it equal to 0. Now I just solve for x. So I have to subtract a 3 over to the other side. So I get x equals minus 3. And I bring this one over to the other side. And that's going to be x equals minus 2. And that right there are my x-intercepts of my parabola. Okay? So what that means is I have a parabola at minus 3 and minus 2. Let's see if I can make that better. It looks like this. And I can actually tell you my y-intercept right here as well, where it crosses the y-axis. That's going to be at 6. Remember this value here? If I have it written in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, your c value is always your y-intercept. So you can actually make a drawing here of your graph quite easily. You could even put in your axis of symmetry through the vertex. Your vertex is going to be right in between these 2 points because it's equal distance from this side to this side. So this is actually at negative 2.5. Okay, so you can actually find quite a bit just by having 3 points on your graph. All right, let's go through and let's try some other ones here. The big thing is to make sure you understand how to factor. If you need help with factoring, just reach out to me and I can send you some like Math 10 review stuff as well. Okay, so let's see here. Let's find some other examples to go through. Let's try this one here. Y equals 2x squared plus 14x plus 12. Okay. So now for this one, if you look here, I have an a value, not a problem. I can see that I can take a 2 out of everything. So I'm taking a common factor out. So I'm just dividing everything by 2 and rewriting it. Because now it's much simpler to work with. So I need factors of 6 now that'll add up to 7. And hopefully you guys know that 6 times 1 also equals, when you add them up, equals 7. So now all you do, don't worry about this 2 here. Take each bracket, make it equal to 0 just like before. This is the new part. And you solve for x. Okay, so again now, my graph is going to look something like this. So at negative 1, and here at negative 6. Okay, if I look, my a value is positive, so I know my graph opens upwards. Something like that. I'm just making sketches here. All I want to do is plot a couple points. It's basically my intercepts and my vertex that I'm worried about. And I know now that my y-intercept here is this value here, my original c value. So I plug that in there. Now I also know my vertex here, or my axis of symmetry, which passes through the vertex, is halfway between these 2 points. All right. So another way that you can solve for that is you can basically, it's like taking the average of the 2. Okay. And that formula is basically you just take them and all you're going to do is like really add them together. So it becomes like negative 6 plus negative 1 divided by 2. So that's negative 7 over 2. Or you could even say negative 3.5. Okay. Really not that bad, right? Now let's see here. So that's kind of the first 2 examples. Other things that sometimes they like to throw at you is, let's say you have something like this. Let's see here. Y equals negative x squared plus 6x plus 10. All I would do if you have a negative in front of the x squared, so a negative 1 a value, is I would take that out of everything and rewrite it like this. And then go ahead and factor. Well, this one you can't really factor. But that's what I would do there. Just take the negative values out and work backwards. Okay, sometimes you can factor them, and we'll learn what to do about those in the next lesson. But that's all you got to be able to do for this stuff here. All right, let's try another one now. Here what I'm going to do is let's work backwards. I'm going to give you a graph. And what we're going to do now is come up with the equation. So I'll draw it out. What I like to do is I make my sketch and then I just label my points around it. It's just a little bit easier. This is my x-axis. Here's my y-axis. Okay, so this point we'll say is at 12. This here is at -1. And this one here is at 4. Okay, so that passes through, my x-intercepts are at 0, or at -1 and 4. My y-intercept is at 12. Okay. So what I do for these ones is, the textbook uses this formula here. If you're given all this information, you need to plug this stuff in. Minus. So it's a times x minus r times x minus s. R and s here, these are just your x-intercepts. You can put them in any order you want. It doesn't matter. Watch, though, for the negative sign here. What that means is you're going to have to change the sign on them as you go, okay? And then the a value here, typically you're going to have to solve for that, okay? We don't know. Remember, the a value determines if it opens upwards or downwards, but it also determines how wide or narrow the graph is. And that part we need to figure out. So I'm going to make this one R, this one S, and plug them in. Remember, I changed the sign on them. Okay. Now, I need to solve for A. Okay, well, that's no problem. Solving for A, I just need to have everything else in the formula. So what I need to do now is take another point from the graph and plug it in for my x and y values. Now, I know this 12 here is my y-intercept, right? And at your y-intercept, you know that x equals 0. So this point here on the graph is actually at 0. Oh, I'm going to write it over here to avoid confusion with the vertex. This point here is actually at 0 and 12, right? So what I can do is I can plug this in for y, this in for x, and then I can solve for my a value here. So what that's going to look like now is I put 12 in, equals a, which I still don't know, plus 0 plus 1. All right, so we'll work this all out. It becomes 12 equals a times 1 times -4. So that's going to be 12 equals -4a. My a value equals -3. So now if I want, I can plug this back in to this equation up here. So it's going to look like this. Now, if you want, you could leave it like this, or you could do your FOIL and figure it out. So remember, FOIL is first times the first. FOIL, outside, inside, last. Like so. So I'd have like -3 x squared. I'm not going to show all of my work here, just to kind of speed things up. Then I just take this -3 and I times it to everything inside that bracket. Now to do a quick check, it says here my y-intercept is at 12, and that's what the graph originally had, so I know I am correct. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm right. All right, I'm going to try a word problem with you guys. Now, I'm not going to write this word problem out. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the notes to upload onto my iPad. So, but this is example 4 on page 388. Okay, now, heads up. This is a little bit of a tougher question, but I really like them, especially in pre-calculus. Big reason we spend a lot of time on quadratics in this unit in Foundations 20 is because it's you see it again in pre-calc 20. So basically, this is just trying to make your life easier for next year. Okay. So let me read out the question here. The members of a Ukrainian church hold a fundraiser every Friday night. They usually charge $6 a plate for a plate of pierogies. They know from previous Fridays that 120 plates of pierogies can be sold at $6 a plate. But for every dollar they increase the price, they're going to sell fewer plates. What should the members charge if they want to raise as much money as they can for the church? All right, this is a great example. I really like doing this one because it's awesome at showing you how math can make you money. All right, so what you want to try to figure out is how can you make the most money? They know that they're charging $6 a plate right now. And that brings in about 120 plates that they'll sell. Okay? So what that means is their revenue that they're going to make would be 6 times 120. So that would be $720 that they make every Friday night. Okay? Now what they want to try to figure out is they want to make more money. All right, they're not being greedy. They're just trying to make more money for their church. So what they want to do is they increase the price by $1. For every dollar increase, you're going to see a decrease of 10 people. But that's okay. If you're making more money and selling less, or if you're charging more and selling less, that's great. The key is, though, is you want to be charging the right amount to make the maximum amount. And remember, when you're dealing with parabolas, the maximum is always your vertex. So we're trying to find the vertex of this. So what we need to do is we need to figure out what's going to happen here. So what I'm going to do is I take my revenue equation here. So revenue is dollars times plates. Okay? So what I know is going to happen, so revenue, what I want to do is I want to take the original $6 and I'm going to increase it by $1. And every time I go up by $1, so maybe $1, $2, whatever, we'll say that's 1x for every $1. We don't know how many dollars, so that's why it's 1x. I'm going to see the 120 people I know go down. Go down. So they're going to lose 10 people. So I make that 10x. So what that means is if I have a $10 or a $2 increase, I'm going to see 20 less people coming in. And this is now my parabola. Okay? So now this is my equation. Now what I need to know is where are my x-intercepts? So I take both of these and I just split them up. Now you can write here like 1x or just x. It's up to you. I just take them both and I make them equal to 0. And I'm going to solve each one. So I know this one is x equals -6. This one here, I'm going to bring the 120 over to the other side by subtracting it. And then I divide both sides by -10. So here I know x equals 12. All right, cool. So what that looks like now, I have 6 here and 12 there. What I want to try to find is the vertex. So remember, my vertex is just the average between the two. So all I have to do is I just take the two values of my x-intercepts, add them together and divide by 2. 12 plus 6 is 18, divided by 2 is 9. Okay? Oh, oops, that's -6. That's where I went wrong. Backtrack. Sorry, guys. Sorry. -6. That's going to change everything. I thought that was high. So this becomes 12 take away 6 because it's 12 plus -6. So 12 take away 6 is 6. Divided by 2 is 3. All right, that makes more sense. So my vertex is at 3. So that means that's my increase. I'm going to increase the price by $3. Okay. So now what you do is you take that in. So what should they charge? So it's a $3 increase. So they should be charging 6 plus 3, $9. Okay. If they charge $9, they're gonna sell 30 less plates, but it'll actually generate them the most revenue. Okay, right? Because if you plug that in, so it'd be 9 times basically 120 minus 10 times 3. Oh. 9 times 90. They'll make $110. So they're going to make $90 more if they charge more and actually sell less. So they'll make more, but think about this also. They're actually making more because they're not buying as many pierogies because they're selling less of them. So they're actually generating quite a bit more money. All right, so that's today's lesson there for you guys to work on. I'd go to page 391. Do number 1, 4, um, 5, try 8 and 9. And then do 10 to, then do 10 to 11. 10 and 11, okay? So 1, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, good talk.